Hi, welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, thanks for watching. Well, guess what? The Republicans meet in Tampa and the Democrats meet in Charlotte for their, quadrennial? Do I got that right, John? Quadrennial conventions, plus our popular financial literacy update, all of that following these words.
This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers, a fast-paced, unrehearsed weekly discussion with and about the leaders who shape your world. And now, here's your host, Terry Madonna.
Hi, welcome back to the program. Well, as I said, the Republicans meet in Tampa. We think, as we tape this, there's some question about what will happen because of the impending tropical storm / hurricane. The John I was referring to is John McLarnon. He's across from me. He's a professor of history at Millersville University, one of my writing partners. And, of course, Berwood Yost, who's the director of the Center for Opinion Research at Franklin and Marshall College. He's a pollster and my colleague at F&M. We've been doing polls for more than 20 years. Did I get that right, John? McLarnon, McLarnon quadrennial,
Quadrennial.
Right? I got it. I was right.
Not quarterly.
I didn't say quarterly, right? Okay, I just wanted to make sure. All right, John, look, you're the political historian. You've written a lot of political history. Two big conventions coming up. When is the last time you think a convention really mattered?
When's the last time it mattered?
Yeah, mattered. You know, where a big decision was made.
Actually, I shouldn't say that. Not 1952. There have been conventions along the way. 1976, with Reagan trying to, steal the nomination from Jerry Ford, and it was an exciting convention. Excitement and matter, I guess, are two different things.
That's a good point.
We haven't had a brokered convention since 1952.
Wow.
But even 4 years ago, the Democratic Convention, when Hillary Clinton went into that convention, and it wasn't clear what she was going to do.
Yeah.
And she wound up asking the convention to nominate Obama by acclamation.
Yeah.
But it was touch and go.
And then you had Ted Kennedy, who couldn't quite get over 1980 with Jimmy Carter, right?
Yeah.
He couldn't quite get over that, and he went there and he was bitter, and that wasn't very helpful, right?
That really was bitter. Yeah. He went to that convention intent on trying to talk delegates into switching their votes for the first ballot, abandoning Carter, because Carter he had spent 3 years running for president, and
in a cardigan sweater when he was talking about how bad the economy was and how we had to cut back on what we ate and what we drove, and right, Berwood, and the gasoline. You were too young. You don't remember that.
I remember all that.
You remember
sure,
with inflation now?
Yeah, sure.
Win.
Well, I'm going to come back to a couple of those things. Look, Berwood, what's we know what these conventions are trying to do, but in the end, what messages do you think the Democrats and Republicans want to leave the folks out in, I guess, TV land, right?
Well, it's an interesting question, because as I think these conventions have become more predictable and more scripted, there's probably fewer eyes on them than there once was. And so, right now, the media coverage of these conventions is going to be a couple of hours, from what I understand, in the major networks. So, and that leads us to the question of the bounce, because in terms of politics, that's what everybody cares about. How much of a bounce comes out of these conventions? And historically, there is normally some bounce, but it's only a bounce because it's not sustained. You know, one candidate gets an advantage over the other. I would suspect there's not going to be much of a bounce coming out of these conventions, because the whole year, we've seen this race kind of static. There have
regardless
been bounces.
of what event, right?
Exactly. And so, I think as things evolve during the last months, the last few weeks of the campaign, and people really do start paying attention, you may see some events affecting the
Maybe Clinton,
results.
If you go back and you look, Clinton got a 16-point
and he
bounce.
Sustained it.
But that was it, right?
That was it.
Actually, McCain had a bigger bounce than Obama. And then after the meltdown of Lehman Brothers, the third week in September 2008, the election was over.
Right.
John, I want to ask you a question about platforms and issues. They used to matter.
My word.
And now, who cares? Is anybody really going to debate What's in the is it what the candidate thinks as opposed to what the party says it should be? How does that work?
I have a suspicion, and for some reason the abortion issue has suddenly bubbled to the surface.
That's
again.
exactly right.
And I have a suspicion that this may be just somebody, the people who are running the convention, an attempt to get people to listen in, because there's going to be a discussion of that. But if you go back in history, I think of two conventions, 1924, where the Klan pretty much ran the show, and then 1968. 1968 is the one that we remember because it was the Democratic convention in Chicago and the Vietnam War.
More activity outside than in, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
Rioting in the streets.
But Humphrey went into that convention pretty much the presumed candidate. I don't think McCarthy really had a shot.
Yeah, I think
but the question was the war plank. Would it be a pro or anti-war plank in the Democratic platform?
All right, we're going to run to a break. When we go back, we're going to continue this discussion. Platform, candidates, who speaks. Is it really going to matter? We'll be back in a moment.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, the statewide voice of business. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by BetterSaferRoads.com. To voice your support for safer highways and less traffic congestion, visit BetterSaferRoads.com. And by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
Hi, welcome back to the program with Franklin and Marshall College's Berwood Yost and Millersville University's John McLarnon. We're chatting about the upcoming Republican and Democratic convention, sort of doing it generically. Berwood, one of the things that you spend a lot of time on is sort of issue coverage, what voters think. I noticed that for each of these conventions, they're going to kind of devote a theme of a day. You know, the economy, energy, maybe not totally for a day. Talk a little bit about what issues you think are going to resonate with the voters. We think we know, but nobody seems to want to talk about those issues.
No one wants to talk about the economy and jobs for some reason. We don't seem to be having that discussion as frequently as I thought we would. I thought the Republicans would be pounding on that constantly, because that's where they really have an advantage when you do this issue polling. I think it's a good idea to focus on specific issues and have a discussion about those issues, because some of these things are really complicated. But in the end, I mean, it's hard to know what's going to come out of this, particularly if the convention coverage is as limited as they're talking about it being. So, you know, again, it's hard to know you know, how many people are going to tune in, how much interest is there. There's certainly not as much interest in this election cycle as there was in 2008. And so I think you're going to have a lot fewer eyes watching these things. So maybe what they do may matter less than...
May matter less, or the press will try to find something to report on that's not germane as I think
I mean, I think you've seen that it's hard for the candidates sometimes to drive the messaging because things pop up. I mean, the recent discussion about abortion, no one wanted to have that discussion. It just kind of came out of nowhere, and I suspect...
So you think one of the there could be a couple unanticipated consequences at either convention that we just can't predict?
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
All right, look, there have been some great moments at some of these conventions with speakers, some very good and some very bad. Yeah, go ahead. Let's chat about that. Bill Clinton, go ahead. You got to tell this story for the folks who may not remember.
Bill Clinton was one of the speakers at the 1988 Democratic Convention. And he started speaking, and he wouldn't stop. And he went on. It
was like 35 or 40 minutes.
Yes.
It was supposed to be 10 or 15.
When he got towards the end, when he said, and in conclusion, the whole place cheered. Now,
and then, wait, we had a great speech by a guy who would eventually be the nominee, right? Barack Obama. Yeah.
Oh, this
Barack Obama. Okay. No, in 2004.
And that was actually what launched him into national politics. And I think the Democrats, it seems to me, are going to do the same thing this year with Elizabeth Warren.
Right.
They won her on the national stage. I mean, she's running against Scott Brown up in
trailing
Massachusetts.
right now.
Right. but they want to make her a national star.
And the Republicans, Marco Rubio, right? And maybe Bobby Jindal?
Yeah.
Is that right? So each will try to put forward their rising stars? Is that...
And also Julian Castro, the mayor of San Antonio, who's going to be the keynote speaker, the first Hispanic keynote speaker at the Democratic Convention. Everybody knows who Christie is already. Right. He's been on the national stage.
And we don't know what he'll say.
Well, that's one of the interesting things about that convention, what Christie will say, because he kind of shoots from the hip from time to time.
Of course, we'll see how scripted that gets. All right, we're going to run to a break. We'll conclude our discussion about these conventions following these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by Pennsylvania Credit Union Association. Pennsylvania Credit Unions, where people are worth more than money. To find a credit union that is right for you, check out ibelong.org. And by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the State System of Higher Education. 14 state-owned universities. The state system is the largest provider of higher education in Pennsylvania. And by the Hospital and Health System Association of Pennsylvania, working towards a healthy Pennsylvania.
Welcome back. This is our preview of the convention. We're sort of doing this generically to give you an idea about what to look for as these conventions unfold. We think the Republican convention will unfold. Presumably the reign, you know, by this point, when this show airs, we'll have a little better feel. Berwood, these big moments that we're talking about, they resonate, but yet they may make careers, but they don't seem to linger much beyond in general for most voters. Is that right? I mean,
That's
giving
true.
your look at the voters.
We look, everybody tracks the convention bounces that these candidates get. We've been doing that for years now, and there normally is a bounce, but it's not sustained, as we said earlier. So, you know, these things don't seem to make a huge difference in the perceptions that people have of the candidates, and not in a sustainable way. And I don't think that that's going to change this year. These candidates have spent millions of dollars. They've been everywhere with the media outlets that we have today. I mean, I think the conventions don't provide.
I got to interrupt you before. I don't want to run out of time. I want to ask you this question. Pennsylvania, I looked at the battleground state, 12 polls, right? We were 11th, now we're the 12th. Michigan, last poll showed 6.6 lead for Barack Obama. We're the 12th state out of the 12. Is this state going to get competitive?
I think it has the opportunity to get competitive. But look, we did a poll in August 2011 that showed Barack Obama leading Mitt Romney by, wasn't it 6?
Okay.
All right. Our last poll showed him leading by 6 or 5, right? So, I mean, this race has been mired in kind of the fundamentals of the election. It's about the economy, economic performance, and the likability of the opponents who are challenging Obama, and those dynamics haven't changed. Yeah.
John, going back to past conventions, are these obsolete? I mean, beyond, I mean, you know, they're cultural, they're historical. Are they worth having just because they're a big old party for all these leaders to get together? It's the only time we have a national parties meet. Not the committees, you know, the national committees do their thing, but that's a handful of people. This is thousands. Are they worth doing anymore? You've written a lot about conventions.
I don't think they're worth it. I think we're going to see the demise of these things, particularly with the massive growth of electronic communications of every shape and form. I remember when I was a kid, and you remember too, being so annoyed for the 2 weeks in the summer every 4 years when there was nothing on television.
Yeah, that's true.
All 3 stations. At nighttime, it was the conventions, night after night after night. Now, what are they going to do? They're going to be broadcasting their nightly news from the convention, and Today will be broadcasting from the convention. And aside from a few specials here and there, the television networks are not really paying much attention to.
Yeah.
Now, Barack Obama and John McCain, the nights that they made their speeches in 2000, they got apparently about the same number of viewers as the Beijing Olympics. So there was a lot of people, but it was 38 million people. But the other nights, when what they were showing from the conventions, it was like 22 million people. And people don't care.
President Obama is going to the football stadium in Charlotte, the same Berwood that he did out in Denver.
Same as in Mile High Stadium.
All right, Bank of America Stadium. They're in my ear. I forgot about that. Can we say Bank of America Stadium? I guess we can. All right, great update. Thanks for coming on. We'll have you back as the campaign progresses. All right, our popular financial literacy update will be on this program in just a moment.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by Highmark Blue Shield, changing the way health plans work for business with a variety of plan options for employers and more choices for employees. Information is available at highmark.com. Have a greater hand in your company's health. And by the Pennsylvania Healthcare Association, the future of long-term care.
Welcome back. It's Financial Literacy Update with Michael Wishnow. He's the Senior VP with the PA Credit Union Association, and Greg Smith. He's the CEO of PSECU. I'm a member, just so you know, just so we get that on the table. You're not upset about that, are you?
Not at all.
I didn't think so. All right, look, one of the things that we talk about once a year, we go back into this whole business of credit scores and credit reports. Now listen, this is important stuff. You want to borrow money, you got to worry about these credit about the credit scores. Have I got this right?
Absolutely.
All right, Michael, you get to talk about what is a credit report. Let's start with that.
Well, a credit report is actually just a snapshot of a borrower's ability to repay. What they've done historically, what their debt-to-income ratio is, what their debt burden is, what kind of financial activity they have, and it's intended to predict the likelihood of repayment.
All right. Now, so we have a credit report. Then what's a credit score?
Credit score is really the accumulation of your history, and it's a prediction of your ability to repay. It's what a lender will use to make a lending decision.
So you get a number, and what are those numbers?
The numbers range from 300 to 850.
300 to 850. Right. So the higher you are, the better you are?
The more likely you are to repay.
Okay. The lower you are,
your credit is.
The weaker you are.
That's correct.
And does that mean?
When we talk about things like subprime, okay, subprime borrowers would be borrowers that might have a score, say, below 600 or so. A prime borrower would be somebody considered maybe above 700.
Big question here. Prime borrower, lower interest?
Absolutely.
Sure.
Subprime, higher interest?
That's correct. Yep. That's why every I'm sorry, Terry.
No, go ahead.
Every lending offer that you see oftentimes will have the phrase rates as low as. And
I didn't think about that. See where I'm
low as, if you have a 800 FICO score, credit score, that's one of the types of credit scores out there, then you're likely to be able to qualify for that low rate.
Wow.
Back to your point about credit reports are important in another way too. Not only are they used in the granting of credit, employers use credit reports now to screen applicants for jobs. Insurance companies use credit reports now to make a decision about whether or not they're going to insure a driver.
That's a great point. So that leads me to another question. If I have a credit score and it's not so good, Michael, how do we improve it?
Well, there's no silver bullet. I mean, the way to improve your credit score is to be responsible in your repayments.
Okay.
It's to limit the amount of credit you have outstanding as well as the amount of debt you have outstanding. Frankly, if your credit score is much below 600, you may want to talk to a credit counselor. You may want to talk to, I'm sure Greg has folks that'll help members out, right, Greg?
We do. We also provide our members, and I don't mean to turn this into a commercial, but we provide our members with their credit score every month. And on my iPad, you can see.
Oh, you mean I can get one of these every month?
Every month.
Why haven't I done that? No,
I don't
don't
know.
ask.
I
Don't
know.
ask. Okay, go ahead.
It's if you log into home banking, you'll find your credit score, and we actually show you 12 months worth of history, so you can see the trend of your credit score.
Wow.
And there's also educational information in there that tells you how, why your score might have changed, why it goes up, why it goes down, how you can impact it.
All right, Michael, one of the things that we've talked about over the years is the need not just sort of let this linger around and, maybe once a year figure out what your credit score is, but to do what?
Well, first of all, you hit it on the head. You have to check. I mean,
Right.
Greg's members get theirs automatically, and I've talked to a number of your members, and they say this is really great because most people check their credit score once, maybe when they get credit, and then they forget about it, and they figure out it's about the same. So you have to check your credit report. You have to check your credit score. If your score is lower than you think it ought to be, then you want to look at the report itself and make sure everything on there is accurate.
Right.
Because there could potentially be inaccuracies that could drive your score down.
And monitoring your credit report's another way to defend yourself against the possibility of identity theft also.
Yeah.
If somebody has stolen your identity, it's going to show up on your credit report first. And under federal law, you're entitled to pull your credit report for free. And there's a website you can go to. It's
annualcreditreport.com.
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 Right.
And
Okay.
there are 3 different bureaus, credit bureaus, Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. And you can go to each of those bureaus once a year. So you could do this every 4 months if you wanted to set up a monitoring program. And this month I'm going to go to Experian. 4 months later, I'll go to Equifax.
Oh, I get your point. So just to see, because they're going to vary
the data's,
a bit.
the data's going to vary a little bit, but it's going to be generally similar.
All right, Michael, before we leave, I want to fix this. There's something about my credit. Are there companies that help you do that?
There are, but be very, very careful.
Right.
It's a minefield, right, Greg?
Absolutely, and there are probably more companies that are problems than there are really good ones.
Yeah,
Are you better going to, in your case, to a credit union or a bank and sitting down with those folks, getting it from people that you've invested with and who have your savings and who understand a little bit about you?
Absolutely.
Is that a better
You're better
idea?
off going with a trusted source.
Right.
Yeah.
Or you can contact the state banking department.
Sure.
They have a list of bona fide credit counseling companies that can help you out.
Is a concern here that you'll get tied up with somebody whose primary job is to give you credit for which you can't pay or to get money out of you?
It's just that there are a lot of scams out there.
Yeah.
And people will offer you, we'll improve your credit score
Right.
for $500.
Right.
And it's
All right. Well, look, this has been very, very helpful. I'm actually going to go home and find out from my wife if we're checking on this, since I didn't know about this. Of course, what do I know? I leave that all to her. And I know. Tell me. Pay more attention to it. All right. We'll be back next week for another edition of Pennsylvania Newsmakers. And as always, stay well.